Hi everyone, this is Stephanie from stampwithstephanie.com, and today I want to show you how to make this adorable card featuring the July stamp of the month called the Bee's Knees. So here's a closer view. We have this beautiful shimmery bee, and then when you open up the card you get this explosion of paper from the flower shop. So let's make one. Alright, so first I'm going to show you what I used, and it will all be linked in my blog post with the dimensions. So this is a sapphire card base that's the standard size, 8.5 by 5.5, and we're going to score it. This is the explosion mechanism. It is 8 by 4. This is an inside of the card on the bottom. It's the usual 4 by 5.25, and then these are inside and outside flaps, and each one of those is 2 by 5.25. And then we have a scrap piece that we're going to put the bee on, the sentiment on the inside, which is 2.5 by 2.5, and then the mat for the sentiment, which is 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. And then finally there's the belly band at the end, which is 3/4 by 11. So those are the pieces, and they will be, the dimensions will be linked. I want to start us with our stamping so that we can make sure it's dry while the card gets built, so that we'll be able to color it with shimmer brush with no problem. So this, because I want a nice dark base, I'm using a stamping platform. This one happens to be the Misty. And I like to take this foam piece and stick it out. It makes it easier to ink the stamp. So I need my bee stamp, which is stuck in my pile over here. And I'm just going to put him down. And since I've just got my paper lined up against it, I don't need to use a magnet, which is good because I don't know where I put my magnets. And we're going to make sure he's pressed down. And, oops, I forgot to grab ink. Oh, I just buried it. Black ink. So I want to use intense black so that when it dries I won't have a problem with my shimmer brushes bleeding. So I'm just going to ink them up really well and press them down onto this piece. And this is why we use the stamping positioner, so that we can get that flower detail without having to worry about lining it up perfect. So I'm going to ink that middle up really well and do another stamp. I'll make sure I press where those flowers are. Ooh, and I pressed hard enough to get little bits of ink on the outside, but that'll be okay because we're going to cut around him. So the bee is good. And then I just want to take my stamp chamois and clean them off. And since I have the positioner out, I might just go ahead and do that for the inside. On the inside, I have some other sentiments from this set. I pulled the Thinking of You, Sweet Friends, which will fit because we're doing diagonal, and that's my favorite one on here. But you also have You're the Bee's Knees, Just Because, and some really pretty flowers, as well as Celebrate Every Moment. So I'm going to pull my Thinking of You. And I also use the honeycombs with the flower and the honeycombs without a flower. So I'm going to pull everything out, and actually I think it'll be easier to just use a regular block for these. I'm going to use its foam since I have it out, and we'll put Thinking of You on our block. And I did these in sapphire. I did the text in sapphire to match the block. So I'm going to do that the same again. So there's my sapphire ink. And I'm going to put my piece at the diagonal that it will be in, and ink my sentiment up. And I always, when I use a block that's too big, I want to go around and make sure that I'm not going to have smudge. And I was just using the edges of the diamond to line that up. Okay, that worked well. And then I wanted to do the one with the flower in black because I'm also going to color it in. And I'm going to do it in honeycomb so it stands out. In honey butter, sorry, honeycombs in honey butter, which is also the yellow that I'm using. So this is the other reason we want to make sure this gets dry. So I'm going to put the flower kind of down here on the edge. Oops, I'll make sure I wipe off that corner. And then I'm going to add a couple of the honeycomb stamps just across the top. I'm going to go off on a few of them, just making it have some dimension up there. I'll even put one more. Okay, so that is all of the stamping, and we're going to set these aside so they can be pretty dry when we go to color them with our shimmer brushes. So I'm just going to put my pad away so I can find things on my desk again. Okay, now we need to prepare to assemble. So we're going to start with our sapphire base. So this base is a gatefold, so it is going to be scored on each end at 2 1/4. So you're not going to be able to read the numbers on my board very well. But here's the 2, and then, sorry, I said 2 1/4, I meant 2 1/8. The quarter has a full line. The 1/8 is the longer slash in the middle. So I want 2 1/8 because I'm going to do that on each end to get my gatefolds. And you could do this with the scoring board, but I had my trimmer out, so it's easier to just use that. So I'm just scoring through, making it nice and deep. And if I want it to be really exact, I would go and score the other end. But I always find that I'm off by just the teensiest bit. So I am going to do one end at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this in along the score lines. And the Close to My Heart paper is two-tone, you can see it. So I want the dark on the outside. So I folded it that way and give it a nice crease. And now, to make sure that this one is exact, I'm just going to fold it in and line it up right with the other flap and hold it down and give it a good crease. This way I only had to measure once and I know that they line up. So that's my card base, and then here's the inside. So let's go ahead and score the mechanism so we can get the scoring done. So this is the inside piece, and it was 4 by 8, and we are going to score it at 2, 4, and 6. So I'm sorry, you can't see on that end. So I am just scoring with the long ways in at 2, and I'm going to move it over to 4. So 4, so you just see on the top, that's 4. And score it at 4. Hey, stop moving. And then I'm just going to flip it and do 2 from the other end because it's easier than lining up with the 6. So 2, 4, and 6 for the middle and the ends. And it's really hard to see the score lines. So you're going to want to actually fold along them because you need to see them for the next step, especially the middle one. So I'm just folding at the score lines. Now, it doesn't really matter for this one which way you fold, but since this is the paper I want, these are going to be mountain folds on the straight lines. So folding with that paper out. Then you're going to make diagonal lines. So you want to go from the middle, the fold in the middle, and line up the fold in the middle to your trimmer, and then line up your corner. So you get a diagonal. You're making an X from the middle to the corner. And with the wire trimmer, you can put it down and make sure you're lined up. I'm satisfied with that. And then hold it nice and tight. And then just score all the way up and down. And you're going to do X's. So you're going to do each diagonal. So we're going to do the middle to the bottom corner. And you could also be probably a tiny bit neater and do this with a pencil, but this works for me. So I have an X, I'll fold it so you can see. I have an X on this side. I have a top and a bottom. And then I'm going to do the same thing. You could basically do it that way, but I like having the score line. So let's see, where's my middle? There's my middle. So I'm going to line up my middle in the trimmer, and then my corner. And I'm doing middle to bottom, I think. Oops, it didn't quite go. There we go, middle to corner. And then, let's see, there's the bottom of my middle to the other corner. Okay, so now, basically, when we go to fold this thing, it's going to make these little triangle things. So you're going to kind of, this is the paper that I don't want showing. So I'm pinching from that side to get this to come down, kind of like those old style cootie catchers. And it's going to be easier to do if you go back and forth and really crease your lines. And that one got a little bit bent, so I'm actually going to redo it. And then I'm going to also do this one. And you'll see, because it kind of folds against itself, it makes this triangle. I'm going to go ahead and make sure these are good too. And again, you can see it once you've creased. It will, and you want to make sure it does, line up at the middle folds. And you can keep making sure that it fits right. Okay, so then when you've got these extra creases, it'll fold much better. And you kind of push, so you push in at the middle, and you get this triangle that lays pretty flat once you've creased it. And then you give a bone folder to the edges again so that it will actually lay flat. And you're going to repeat, so push in and then lay flat. And you get this square or diamond. Okay, and I ended up doing mine the other way this time. So the paper that is on the outside is going to be your back, because that's what you're going to attach. So I don't particularly want this flower paper, so I'm going to flip it. And just going to take a second because I trained it to fold the other way. So I'm going to pinch the other way because I forgot to tell you that you want the paper that you want to see less of on the outside. So I have the same crease, same score lines. I'm just switching which way it's folded. So I'm pinching the other way now because I want the flowers out. Okay, there we go. So now I have it the way I want it. I want my flowers out so that I open it to get this, and I like it going that way. So now that you've seen me do it a few times, and you know that it will still work even when it's been bent a couple times. So that is the hardest part of this card done. Now I'm going to get this trimmer out of the way, and we are all set to assemble. So I need snail, and I had these pieces for the inside, so I'm going to go ahead and do the inside. And these are just the same pieces I mentioned earlier. They're all the same size to line up with the flaps. And I always just do one kind of guesstimated along with a, oops, that was too much border on one side. Try to get the top and bottom border about the same, just estimating. That looks good. And then I'm going to do the big middle piece. And I can basically line it up top and bottom with that flap, so then I only need to get the sides basically even. And then I have one more flap. Oops, that went crooked. Let's see if I can pull that off real quick and get it to go straighter. I'm gonna go in too fast on camera. Okay, so I want to line up so that the bottom looks even, and so that it looks like it goes straight. That's better. And that messy corner will actually be covered by the mechanism. And then the mechanism is going to end up in the middle and attached to the card like that. We're going to go ahead and do the outside first. So these are the outside, and I like the white and yellow flowers on the outside. And the same thing, I close this and line it up. Since I can see inside, I'm going to go ahead and line it up to the same heights. I'll close that one and line it up with the other one. Okay, so that's the main part of the card. I'm going to green because we're about to color. Okay, before we do the mechanism, I think we want to we want to do this part. So this is going to go, this is the sentiment we stamped. We're going to go ahead and put it on its blue. I'm just lining it up with the border on the mat. And then, since there's not a lot of coloring, that's going to be easier to color after it's all attached, so we can then leave the card. Let's see, actually, we want the card to be able to dry, so let's get this colored and then we'll work on the bee before we put it together. So I'm not going to color anything on these. I'm going to do the flower that's down here, and I'm going to color with my shimmer brushes. I decided that I wanted the bigger flower in pink, the medium to be white, and this little tiny one that you can barely see, but you'll see when you color it, is going to be blue. So I just pull out my shimmer brushes, and I'm going to use some scratch paper because sometimes they're wet, the pens are wet, the brushes, when you first open them. And just make sure it's coming out where I want. It is. So I'm going to just paint on the blue. I'm going to paint the little flower blue. And then there's another one over here. And then also forgot honey butter. Oh, I did get honey butter. I'm going to do the middle of the flowers in this honey butter. And when you're using these pens, they don't seem very shimmery until they get dry. So you'll have a nice pleasant surprise when this thing dries. And then I'm doing the leaves around the bigger flowers with sage. And then I wanted to leave that one flower white, so that just leaves a pink flower. And I'm just going to color him, the bigger one, in pink. And the shimmer brushes will kind of move, spread out a little bit, so it's okay to leave little tiny spots or to not have them perfectly lined up. Okay, so we're going to set this aside one more time to dry. So this is my shimmery, and I did not add anything to the hexagons. And then I'm going to keep my scratch paper out and work on my bee. You could fast forward through my coloring because I will show you the mechanism at the very end, or you can color along with me. So for the bee, I found it easiest to kind of do the leaves. So I'm going to do all my leaves in green. This is sage. When I did this before, sometimes I missed leaves until later because you see them as you start coloring, so you may end up coming back to get more colors. See, it looks like I got most of them over there. There's not many in his middle. There's some over here. And for green, for the leaves, I'm pretty much just doing a dot. It's not exact, and it will turn out just fine. And then I did the littlest flowers, the ones that look like they're barely open, in sapphire to match the outside of the paper. And it is pretty hard to find all of them. So, oh, when I did that, I discovered some green I missed. And then I'm going to go back to the blue, and I'm trying to get all of these little ones so I can use all my blue at once, but I'm going to have to keep going back. Let's see, I think that's a blue one. That might have been a leaf. That's blue. These little ones. The little ones are the hardest for me to get because they're a little bit smaller, so sometimes my blue's bleeding. And then I did the pointier flowers that look like daisies. I just left as white flowers, and then I just kind of did a mix of the bigger ones in pink and blue. Light blue. I used Capri. The pink I'm using is Flamingo because that's what goes with the flower shop paper we used. So I'm just kind of mixing it up. I'll have some pink and some blues. So there's some pink, And I'll get some pink on this side. We'll do that big one in blue this time to mix it up. And we'll do this one down here in pink. And then I forgot to do the flowers at his middle. This is a good pink one. I'll do this one in pink. And then for blue, I used a lighter Capri for the other flowers. So this is Capri. And I'm just coloring mostly to the lines. And it does, fortunately, go pretty quickly. See, it looks like that's that because I wanted to leave the rest of those daisy looking ones white. So then here's one from his middle. Now if you start running out of the shimmer, you can just do a light squeeze on the brushes, but you will want to do it over the scrap paper. Let's see, these are some little flowers, so we'll just make them blue. And then over here, that's a daisy, that's blue. And then, just like the other flowers, I wanted to do, I got ink on my fingers. I wanted to do the middle with honey butter. So that's that one. Just go through and do as many middles as I can find in yellow. Oops, missed a flower. I even want to do the middle of what would be the daisies. So all of the flower middles. Oops, missed one there too. Alright, so we'll go back and do this missed one in blue and the other missed one in pink. That's down here. Okay. So the flowers are colored in, and I just need to do his body. So he already comes with black stripes, so I'm just going to do some yellow stripes. Oops, I forgot the yellow in his middle too. And same thing, I'm just coloring him with the shimmer brush. And then, as a very last step, I am going to find my clear. I don't know where my clear is. On my original one, I added some clear shimmer to his head to make him also have sparkly. So that is an optional extra step. Okay, so now we are very nearly done. We're going to need to cut him out, but we're going to give him a minute to dry while we put our mechanism together. So back to our card and our inside mechanism. So we've got it folded into its square. I'm going to bone fold it again so I know that it's laying nice and flat. So it's got a bit more overlap than I like. So I'm just going to make sure it folds down nice and flat so my card will close as flat as it possibly can. And then we're going to line it up. We're going to put glue on what will be the back. So where it folds together, you want to flip it so it doesn't have the coming together, and that's your back. And because it's going to be messed with a lot, you want a lot more glue than normal. So I'm pretty much covering the back with glue. And then I am going to look at where the middle is, and I'm going to line it up to one of my flaps. And I'm just getting it so you can see where the half is. And I'm lining that up and getting it middle here, so equal amounts showing as best I can. And then I'm gonna stick it down. That should be where it belongs. And I'm gonna flip and burnish. Okay, so now it's down. Then I need to actually attach on the inside. So for the inside, I like to only do one line near the middle on each side. So top to bottom point. And you could close it, but I like it to be a tiny bit, like just like 1/8 of an inch from the top. So I'm just going to line it up and make sure it's straight, and then push it down. And then we're going to do exactly the same thing on the other side. So a line from point to point. And we're going to open this a little bit so that it's not all the way at the top, but it's like 1/8 of an inch showing. About 1/8 of an inch, and I just eyeball it. And just make sure it's straight and push it down. And then it will fold flat, and it will open. This one moved on me. That's what happened. Okay. If it's not cooperating, mine isn't, I need to crease a little bit further out so that it will come out where it belongs. And then line it up that way. There we go. And if you need to recrease, you always can. Okay, so it doesn't fold perfectly flat because there's a lot in there. And then it'll open. There's your mechanism. And since there's nothing on the front yet, if you decide you like the way the paper looks this way, it can still be flipped. And at this point, we are going to put in our should be dry enough to glue sentiment. So we're just going to put glue on the bottom and then stick it inside, and it'll basically take the center of that explosion because it has a mat. And we are almost done with the card closed. We're going to go ahead and make our belly band. This is that last piece that is 3/4 by 11. And on my original, I embossed it with hexagons, my retired stamp set. If you want to do that, you just run it through your embosser. You just have to remember you're going to have to do it twice because you're going to have to flip it. And it's okay if they don't line up perfectly because you'll only see parts of it. So I like to do my belly band just kind of on the fly. So I'm going to close my card and fold it basically where I want it. And you want it a tiny bit loose because you want it to slide. And then just burnish. And then do the same on this one. Line it up so the pieces are hiding. Burnish. And you can kind of test if it's tight enough, too tight, and it's really easy to readjust. So once you're happy with it, then go ahead and glue the belly band together. So glue on the end of one piece, make sure they're lined up, and attach. And then our very last step is going to be the bee. So he needs to be cut out, and mine is dry enough to cut. So I just used my close to my heart scissors, and I didn't go perfect around the flowers, so it goes pretty quickly. It's hard for me to cut under camera, but remember when you're cutting, you want to turn the paper, not so much the scissors. And I didn't go exact at all, so I just kind of went loose around the flowers, so it goes pretty quick. And then I went in and around the general shape of his antennae. And you could fussy cut as, well, fussy, or as not fussy as you want. Whoops, I went closer to the wings than I like on that one. Now remember, this is why we weren't worried about my smudge on the paper. And I'm kind of getting very, very general shape where the flowers are. I'll go to this leg and then go in so I get a little bit of his shape there. And I'm going to call that good enough. So you can already see a little bit of the shimmer from the flowers. And I'm going to put him, I have a little piece that's overhanging, so I'm going to cut some of this off so that I can have, and I don't care about it being straight because it's going to be covered by the bee. And I'm just going to put him kind of at an angle so that he covers that ugly part. And then I'm just going to put glue right, definitely over the ugly part, and right where I want him to be on the belly band. Only on the band so that it will slide. You can even see my glue there. I'm going to put him at a pretty good angle so I can cover all of that. And I had a little bit of glue where I don't need it, so I just can rub it off. And you want to do that so your card doesn't stick to other things. And there it is. A finished Bee's Knees explosion card. I hope you liked it, and I hope you're inspired to give it a try. As always, if you liked the video, please like and consider subscribing. And you can check out the description for a link to my blog, which will have the paper directions. Thanks, and happy crafting. Bye.